There's a woman in the Bible who cried so hard in church that the priest thought she was drunk. Not tipsy. Full-on wasted. He was about to throw her out, until he realized what she was actually doing. And what happened next is either the most beautiful act of faith you've ever heard, or the most disturbing example of religious manipulation in ancient history. I honestly can't decide which one it is. And by the end of this, neither will you. Her name was Hannah. And her story is about what happens when society tells you you're worthless, when someone you live with torments you every single day, and when you get so desperate that you'll promise anything, even something unthinkable, just to make the pain stop. This isn't a feel-good Bible story. This is about power, humiliation, and the psychology of desperation. Here's the setup. Hannah lived in a time when your value as a woman was determined by one metric: sons. No sons meant no security, no legacy, no future. You were essentially a failed investment. Hannah had no sons, but her husband's other wife. She had plenty. Yeah, polygamy. Her husband Elkanah had 2 wives, Hannah, who he loved, and Peninnah, who had all the children. And Peninnah figured out exactly how to weaponize that power. Think about the most toxic relationship you've ever witnessed. The person who knows exactly what button to push to destroy someone emotionally. The coworker who reminds you of every failure. The family member who brings up your biggest insecurity at every gathering. That was Peninnah. Every single day. The Bible says in 1 Samuel 1 verse 6 that Peninnah would provoke her bitterly, because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb. This wasn't occasional shade thrown at family dinners. This was calculated, relentless psychological warfare designed to break Hannah completely. And it worked. Hannah stopped eating. She cried constantly. The Bible says she was in bitterness of soul, which in ancient Hebrew carries the weight of someone whose entire sense of self has been shattered. Now here's what makes this interesting. Hannah didn't just accept her fate. She didn't quietly fade into the background. She did something so desperate, so extreme, that it would either prove she had incredible faith, or that she'd completely lost her mind. Let me paint the full picture of what Hannah was dealing with. She lived in Ramah, in a household where she was the favorite wife but the failure. Her husband Elkanah genuinely loved her. The Bible is explicit about this. In 1 Samuel 1 verse 5 inches, but to Hannah he gave a double portion, for he loved Hannah, although the Lord had closed her womb. He gave her extra food, extra attention, extra affection. He was trying. But here's the thing about being told, "But I love you," when you're being systematically destroyed, it doesn't fix the problem. In ancient Israel, a barren woman had no legal protection when her husband died. No inheritance rights. No social standing. Love doesn't pay bills or secure your future. Peninnah understood the game perfectly. She had the children. She had the power. And she made sure Hannah knew it. Every year, the family would travel to Shiloh to worship at the tabernacle and offer sacrifices. Should have been a spiritual retreat. A family celebration. For Hannah, it was an annual nightmare. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. Year after year, same humiliation, same mockery, same prayers to a God who seemed to be ignoring her. And Elkanah, he tried the classic move of well-meaning but clueless men everywhere. "Hannah, why are you crying? Why won't you eat? Why are you so sad? Aren't I better to you than 10 sons? Imagine being told, aren't I enough? When someone is systematically destroying your mental health and your husband doesn't even address the real problem. That's not comfort. That's dismissal with a smile. But then, one year at Shiloh, something snapped. After another meal where Peninnah had clearly done her damage, Hannah got up, walked to the tabernacle, and had what can only be described as a complete emotional breakdown in front of God. Here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. The Bible says she was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, "O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your servant and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head." Stop. Read that again. Hannah wasn't just praying for a son. She was negotiating, making a deal. "God, if you give me a son, I'll give him back to you. Permanently. He'll be yours, not mine." This was a Nazirite vow, a lifelong dedication to God's service. No wine, no haircuts, complete religious separation. Now here's the question that should bother you. Was this faith, or was this the bargaining stage of grief? Was Hannah trusting God, or was she so psychologically broken that she'd promise anything, even giving away the child she desperately wanted, just to win once against Peninnah? Because think about what she's actually saying. I want a son so badly that I'm willing to have him for maybe 3 years, then hand him over to live with priests for the rest of his life. That's not normal. That's desperation masquerading as devotion. But here's what made the situation even more bizarre. Her prayer was so intense, so raw, that it looked like insanity to everyone watching. She was whispering frantically, lips moving, tears streaming, no sound coming out. Just this visceral, desperate communion with a God who'd been silent for years. Eli the priest watched this and came to the most logical conclusion for the time. Hannah was speaking in her heart, only her lips moved, and her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli took her to be a drunken woman. And Eli said to her, "How long will you go on being drunk? Put your wine away from you." She looked drunk, or possessed, or mentally unstable. Put yourself in that moment. You're having the most vulnerable breakdown of your entire life, pouring out years of pain to God, and the religious authority figure accuses you of being wasted. Most people would have left, would have given up, would have concluded that even God's representatives thought she was worthless. Hannah didn't. But Hannah answered, "No, my Lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. I'm not drunk, I'm broken. There's a difference." And Eli, to his credit, recognized that he'd misread the situation. Then Eli answered, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him." A simple blessing. That's all. No dramatic miracle. No angelic visitation. Just, go in peace, maybe God will answer. But something shifted in Hannah's psychology. She hadn't gotten the answer yet. The pregnancy hadn't happened. But she'd made her vow, been acknowledged by the priest, and decided to believe it would work. If you're still watching and wondering where this goes, subscribe, because what happens next raises even more uncomfortable questions. And it did work. The Bible says in 1 Samuel 1 verses 19 to 20, "They rose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, then they went back to their house at Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. And in due time Hannah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Samuel, for she said, I have asked for him from the Lord." Samuel, asked of God, or depending on how you translate the Hebrew, heard by God. After years, maybe decades, of mockery, tears, and unanswered prayers, Hannah finally got pregnant. Finally had her son. Finally had proof that she wasn't cursed, wasn't worthless, wasn't forgotten by God. Imagine the look on Peninnah's face. The Bible doesn't tell us what happened when Hannah came home pregnant. It doesn't describe Peninnah's reaction when the barren wife suddenly had the miracle baby. But you know it was there. You know the power dynamic in that household completely shifted. Hannah had won. But here's where the story goes from triumphant to deeply disturbing, because Hannah didn't forget her vow. When Samuel was weaned, probably around 3 years old, still a toddler, Hannah packed him up, took him back to Shiloh, and did exactly what she'd promised. 1 Samuel 1, verses 27 to 28 says, "For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is lent to the Lord." She gave him away, completely. Now, the religious interpretation is beautiful. Hannah was faithful, kept her vow, trusted God's plan. But let's be honest about what actually happened here. A 3-year-old child was taken from his mother and left to be raised by priests in a religious compound. He would see his mother maybe once a year when the family came for festivals. Imagine being that child. Imagine being Hannah, walking away from a toddler who's calling for you. Was this faith, or was this the cost of a desperate bargain she made when she was psychologically broken? If you're struggling with that question, good, subscribe for more Bible stories that don't give you easy answers. And then Hannah prayed. Not a sad prayer. Not a reluctant prayer. A victory song. My heart exults in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is none holy like the Lord. there is none besides you, there is no rock like our God. My mouth derides my enemies. Hannah wasn't just praising God. She was declaring victory over Peninnah. Over everyone who'd mocked her. Over the system that said she was worthless. Her prayer continues for 10 verses, one of the most theological and profound prayers in the Old Testament. Scholars note it's almost identical in structure to Mary's Magnificat in the New Testament. It's about God lifting up the lowly and bringing down the proud. But underneath the theology, there's something else: vindication. Hannah had suffered for years, made an impossible vow, kept it, and now she was declaring that she'd been right all along. The legacy. Samuel became one of the greatest prophets in Israel's history. He anointed Kings Saul and David. He guided the nation through a massive political transition. He's considered one of the most important figures in Jewish history. All because a barren woman made a desperate deal with God and actually kept it. Oh, and one more detail the Bible includes. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 21 says, "Indeed the Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and bore 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the young man Samuel grew in the presence of the Lord." After giving away her firstborn, Hannah had 5 more children. 3 more sons, 2 daughters. The woman who was mocked for being barren ended up with 6 kids total. Peninnah, never mentioned again in the text. She just disappears from the story. So, here's what I can't figure out about Hannah's story, and I'm genuinely asking. Was this an act of extraordinary faith, or was it religious manipulation born from trauma? Did Hannah actually trust God's plan, or was she so desperate to prove Peninnah wrong that she'd sacrifice her own son's childhood? And here's the bigger question: does it matter? Because regardless of her motives, Hannah's vow produced Samuel. Her desperation changed the course of a nation. Her psychological breaking point became one of the most celebrated stories of faith in religious history. Maybe the truth is that faith and desperation aren't opposites. Maybe they're just 2 words for the same thing, depending on whether the story ends well. What do you think? Was Hannah's vow beautiful or disturbing? Drop your honest answer in the comments. And if you want more biblical stories that make you uncomfortable instead of just inspired, subscribe, because we're just getting started.